"You'd be prettier if you smiled more," Tom said, grinning like he'd just given me a compliment. His words hung in the air, thick and smug, echoing through the cold, glass-walled meeting room. Everyone else pretended not to hear it. That was the worst part. They heard. They just didn't care. I smiled. It wasn't real. It wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile you give someone before turning the knife. This wasn't the first time Tom had said something like that. Over the years, I had given this company everything. Late nights, holidays, weekends, ideas that made millions. I kept our biggest clients happy, managed crises, and trained the same people who kept getting promoted over me. And every time I thought this was the moment they'd see my value, I was reminded I was just another team player, replaceable, invisible, smile-worthy. The final insult came that morning. The open senior role I had basically designed with my own workload, handed to Brian, some guy who'd been here 6 months and once called TikTok a passing fad. I was called into Tom's office afterward. He said, "You're doing great, just not leadership material. Maybe if you had more presence, confidence, smile more in meetings, you know? People respond to that." That's when I knew I was done. That afternoon, I opened my personal laptop, connected to the Wi-Fi, and started quietly saving a few things. My old pitch decks, client strategy sheets, performance analytics I'd personally built. Nothing illegal, nothing they could sue me for, just reminders of who really did the work here. I smiled as I cleared my desk, nice and slow. Nobody noticed. Later that evening, I sat in my car, staring at the contact on my phone. Michael Avery, CEO of Klein & Partners, Tom's biggest rival. We'd met at a conference last year, briefly. He'd told me, "If you ever get sick of being second place, give me a call." I smiled again, this time for real, and hit dial. "Michael, it's me. I'm ready." Leaving quietly takes more skill than people think. It's not just packing a box and saying goodbye. It's a game of patience, a long con. And if you do it right, no one sees it coming until it's already over. Over the next few weeks, I became the version of myself that Tom liked best. Quiet, agreeable, and always smiling. I nodded in meetings, laughed at bad jokes, and let others take credit. I even brought donuts one morning. Team spirit, I said with a grin. Tom called me a ray of sunshine. That made me want to scream. But behind the scenes, I was working. Every day, I took a little more. Nothing that would break any rules. Just enough to remind myself what I'd built. My pitch decks, creative briefs, ad strategies, A/B testing reports, timelines, client profiles. I saved it all to a personal drive. Some of it was old work, some of it current, but every single file had my fingerprints on it. Client contact lists were next. I didn't need much, just the names, numbers, and a few notes I'd kept for myself. Most of them knew me by name already. I'd been the one keeping them happy for years while Tom schmoozed and took credit. I also started testing the edges, dropping tiny bits of wrong information in meetings, harmless things like the wrong ad date or a slightly off-budget projection. Nothing big enough to cause panic, but just enough to slow things down. I watched as junior staff scrambled, confused by documents that suddenly didn't match. Tom started to blame them. The team got frustrated. A crack, just a small one, but cracks spread. And still, I smiled. No one suspected a thing. If anything, Tom was more relaxed around me now. He thought I was back in line. He even said he was proud of my attitude. I smiled again and thanked him. Finally, after weeks of careful planning, I sent the email. Michael Avery replied almost instantly, "Meet me Thursday. Discreet location. I'll have questions." That Thursday, I left work early, claiming a dentist appointment. Instead, I took the train across town and walked into a quiet bar on the east side, the kind with dim lighting and no one asking questions. Michael was already there, sipping black coffee, sharp suit, sharper eyes. "You're early," he said. "I don't like to waste time," I replied, sliding into the booth. He smiled. "Neither do I. Let's talk." as alles is ja, hoch gremaus, so vedun ihr schaunomas, beschil, snaireps, it is no with, nair, the serpents on meestens na, as has it any den schisnast, in rap, in max mosten fjawing overstuff and so, take it of an up, smack and snap, ja, snillets no mas fist, organos at. Ja, mag wie nerf zei, die als mijn ekst dat zelf ook jou given, stop, meest nu am fixen. Nou we het nooit er zo voor hem. Saaf twemel kam, nengel tassie er was zo. Was die jam, dus niet dit, snap som dit. Die mezelf, kost die zelf, ja vast im sa. Snest die misten jammen loch speak, en is ulzi. Jan aan mij is de nesnes neven op. Hast heb je niet dat. Had de de passende schizner. Is die vaart zijn meeste los die. Van de ngors, de wolfing vume, niest de thangen nest blitsui, masten, sim oxlami, stels nialdes, nia hab fellas nachgeits genams ngelgars, ja oben de logwin, near, lauwen ik nozen het foy de kap, wan op, ich dit sarstiu, mies het ja wo so des hem, skop minist ngelam adwas schüif, des erstmas, slami mas, swatch ihr des nal kom verf, hier with the neither. Nou we nu eten zo is, ze neerst de first arts in de uur of verder. We aan niet el, slaar aan mas ngeur goed. Heel zin op, swatch hier ze meest nooit van nou zo na heeft dit zie. Dit ja, ja zie. Macht saus nog aan mij. Dit is eerste zeg ja. Ga je toch maar van je zu. Dat is. Wie loos dus ja. Ja, nu af ons aan door. Smaak is niet lachen maar verlies. Zij je hebt ook dat snel. Ze sturen weer jaar fase dus zo de bekark surf. Serious des. Slams ja, heel serious. Snelbi, sad zijn op wel of mij initieel. Dat is ja, zes uur nu niet maar. Ze arbes, vast olie. Hij heeft geschoten weet als hij mij in was in die room die volksnapping is. Ze vazen in wel met naf ja. Most, daar nou weer snarfen. Wel of metal mis zo snel dils sinds ze een nieuwe snabes niet ja. Hele ze voor iets niet over. En ons en het. She has to say either in Asia. Maar die vrouw life daar weer. Ja, stom hier toch ja, maar nog de daar. Jan at, it is at, das it's, he is der willing if he can look good. So jasens and schwimmer about this arch sit ignorant. That's he. Snarch seen us a good festini. So with 5 hours same book must. We never snarch get the all milk and them. Of me so we. Step milk green nurse the opposite muff. Was now what you have. Now bobs when yes the surface were no more than. Steam than. Du must a love is a must. Se fight the cap. Fels we more much for the hair. When. Ja, was nou as was niet zo wel. Na en er valt iets in steam at felle. Zie run of zij zie lo, daar han om ik in het me bjargal. Sneert slef. Gaat wel slow. Run in de car run. Staat al zo. Zie again. Fake get oath aan het om of saia. Gaat wel hand ja. Scans the manch was you. Smuis zie er op. Laam slkam. Flas sample dus ik ja. Meeste na. Dat ja. Waarschijnlijk versteer ik vrienden. Ja, mij laat wil schatten om mas ngere verwachten. Sven me van, ik Yeshua, ja snel, maar ik zie hem echt. Hier mis die nu in sloper. Hier is dus hartstikke die liefde. Nem ach bedoeling er van me. Was doing er van me. Hoe best het zorger het lof van je. Dat zie. Hey, hier werf niet mag gewoon als ja aardig. En is waar bij als zo wie. Hoop ze wel zo weinig. Is die hem nou zo het van. Ja, het zie op dit look. It didn't take long for the industry to start talking. Within a few weeks, word had spread. I was now the head of strategy at Klein & Partners. Suddenly, people who'd once overlooked me were watching closely. Old contacts congratulated me. Recruiters started calling. And the best part, my inbox was filling up with messages from former co-workers. Congrats, one read. Also, how's the culture over there? I'm done with Tom, another said. If there's ever an opening, keep me in mind. They came slowly at first, one every few days. Then, all at once, half of the people I used to work with were tired of being ignored, overworked and talked down to. I didn't promise anything, but I listened. I made notes. Poaching quietly isn't hard when the person they're running from is Tom. One afternoon, I was organizing old files on my company drive, backups from the cloud I'd saved before leaving, just for reference. That's when I saw it, a folder labeled Internal Archives, Q2. I opened it and felt my stomach twist. Inside was a campaign pitch I had written over a year ago. It had been rejected by Tom, said it wasn't strong enough, but here it was. Identical wording, same structure, submitted under his name to a national marketing competition. and he'd won. There was even a picture of him holding the trophy, smiling like he'd solved world peace. He'd taken my work, deleted my name, and built his reputation on it. I hadn't noticed at the time, too busy fixing his mistakes and managing client fallout. Now, looking at it with clear eyes, I saw it for what it was. Theft, clean and simple. I stared at the file, fingers hovering over the mouse. I could release it now, blast it across LinkedIn, send it to every client he ever impressed, but that would be loud, messy. He'd deny it, spin it. No, this needed to land like a quiet bomb. I smiled, saved a copy of the file and placed it in a folder called Timing. Let him keep smiling. I'd wipe that grin off his face when it counted. It started small, just one campaign. We targeted a client who had been halfway out the door at my old company for months. I knew what they liked, what they hated, and exactly what they were missing. We gave them a pitch so perfectly tailored, it felt like we read their minds. They signed with us in 3 days. That was the first drop. Then came another, and another. We went after companies that I knew were unhappy with Tom's leadership. I remembered every complaint, every email they sent me venting about late reports or bad presentations. It wasn't luck. We were precise, careful, quiet. One by one, we pulled them in. From the outside, it looked like a shift in the market, but inside Tom's company, panic was setting in. I started hearing things. Late-night Slack messages from old co-workers. He's in meltdown mode. He keeps asking who's talking to you. He's convinced someone's leaking strategy. He wasn't completely wrong. Nobody was leaking, but people were talking. People who remembered how I treated them. People who wanted out. Then came the changes. Tom scheduled loyalty check-ins, asked for phone records, held closed-door meetings. Managers started watching staff like hawks. Projects stalled. Deadlines slipped. Every small failure turned into an interrogation. One afternoon, I got a message from Megan, who worked in account services. "Today was wild," she wrote. "Tom cornered Brian in the conference room and accused him of being your mole." I almost laughed. Brian, his chosen one, the guy he picked over me. She kept going. He actually shouted, "You're the only one dumb enough to trust her." Brian denied everything, obviously, but he looked terrified. That made me pause. Tom wasn't just losing clients. He was losing control. The paranoia was eating him alive. He had built his little kingdom on credit and fear, and now it was all slipping. And the best part, I hadn't even made my big move yet. No interviews, no press release, just results. I imagined Tom pacing his office, throwing papers, trying to figure out how I was staying one step ahead, wondering if someone in his team was feeding me insider information, or if I was just smarter than he ever gave me credit for. I didn't answer Megan. I didn't need to, but I did add a note to my notebook. Brian, shaken, could crack soon. The silent war had begun, and I was winning. And the conference was big, industry-wide, full of press, clients, and competitors. The kind of event where reputations are made or broken. I was set to speak on a panel about future trends in marketing. Guess who else was on the list? Tom. I smiled when I saw his name. This time, it wasn't just personal. It was perfect timing. For the past 2 weeks, I'd been working with my new company's PR team. We didn't plan a public takedown. That would look bitter. Instead, we prepared a quiet bomb, a single slide with a time-stamped strategy document, dated 1 year before Tom's award-winning campaign. The file had my name in the metadata, my original notes, and the final version that won him the trophy, side by side. The day of the event, I walked in wearing a fitted black blazer, heels, and calm confidence. Heads turned. People recognized me now. The room buzzed when I entered. Tom looked up from his seat at the panel table and froze. He stood to greet me like nothing was wrong. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, forcing a smile. I smiled back. "You'll get used to it." The panel began. We answered a few surface-level questions about audience engagement, new tools, brand loyalty. Then the moderator asked, "Can you share a past strategy you're most proud of and how it changed your approach?" I nodded. "Sure," I said, clicking the remote in my hand. The screen behind us lit up with 2 documents. The room quieted. "This," I said, pointing to the first file, "is a campaign strategy I created in May of last year. It was shelved, rejected, called Too Ambitious." I clicked again. "And this is the award-winning campaign that followed, just months later. Same framework, same timeline, Different name on the credits. People leaned forward. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Wait, is she saying—" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him. I just showed the facts, the timestamps, the side-by-side comparisons. Let the evidence speak. I looked at Tom. He stared straight ahead, face pale, lips pressed tight. Not a word. The moderator looked stunned. The room stayed silent for a full 10 seconds before anyone spoke. And me? I just smiled. The day after the conference, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Blog posts, LinkedIn updates, even a small article in a marketing newsletter. It was everywhere. Marketing exec exposes. Stolen strategy, live on stage. Screenshots of my slide presentation were already being shared online, with people circling the timestamps and praising the quiet professionalism of the reveal. I didn't comment on any of it. I didn't need to. But Tom, he couldn't hide. By noon, I heard he'd been pulled into an emergency board meeting, the kind with legal sitting in the corner and nobody smiling. One of my old co-workers messaged me. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. They're digging through every campaign now. Meanwhile, things were moving fast at my new company. Clients I had dreamed of working with were now reaching out to me. Not the company, not a team, me. And then came the call I never thought I'd get. "Hi, Eliza," said a voice I recognized immediately. Carol, VP at Hudson and Row, a huge retail brand I had pitched to years ago. Tom had shut it down back then, saying they were too small for the trouble. "Just saw your presentation. We were impressed. Think we could talk?" I held the phone to my chest for a second, let myself grin, then brought it back. "Absolutely. I'll have a proposal ready by Friday." Later that evening, I was going through emails when a message popped up from an unfamiliar account. No subject line, just a file attachment and one line of text. "You need to see this." From someone who still believes in doing the right thing. I scanned the file. It was encrypted, but not hard to open. Inside were spreadsheets, approvals, signatures. At first glance, it looked like budget paperwork, but something didn't line up. There were line items for vendor expenses that never existed, repeated charges under fake names, and payments signed off personally by Tom. I stared at the numbers, piecing it together. It wasn't just lazy accounting. It was embezzlement, clean, hidden in plain sight, and going back years. I leaned back in my chair, heart racing, not out of fear, but from the weight of what I held. I could send this to the board anonymously. It wouldn't take much, just one email, one little push. I clicked save and filed it under a folder called Next. And then I sat back and smiled again. By the end of the week, it was official. Tom had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The announcement was short, cold, and buried in a company-wide email. But the message was clear. He was out. For now, maybe forever. I heard they brought in an outside firm to run audits. People were being pulled into quiet meetings. Laptops were checked. Files reopened. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew. They were looking for whatever else Tom had buried. Back at my new job, things were good. Better than I expected. We'd landed 2 new clients, both ones I had chased for years. My team respected me, and more importantly, they trusted me. Michael even invited me to lead our next all-hands meeting. He called me a quiet storm. I like that. Still, I didn't celebrate too loudly. I kept my head down, stayed focused, and did the work. The rest would speak for itself. Then, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I got the email. No subject line, no greeting, just one sentence. Was it ever personal? I stared at it for a while. There was no need to check the sender. I knew who it was. Tom. Even now, after everything, he was trying to understand how he'd lost. Like the idea that someone he once dismissed could take him down just didn't make sense in his world. I didn't write a long message. No lecture. No anger. He didn't deserve that. Instead, I opened my front-facing camera, fixed my hair, and took a picture. Just me, sitting at my desk, smiling, confident, calm. Then I attached it to the reply with one line, "Always," and hit send. 3 months later, I was on the cover of a business magazine, the quiet force behind the industry's boldest moves. They did a full feature. My journey, the downfall of my former company, the way I rebuilt everything from scratch. They asked about leadership, vision, revenge. I gave them the truth, minus the drama. I didn't need to spin the story. The results spoke loud enough. The best part wasn't the press. It was the people I brought with me. Over the weeks, I'd slowly built a new team, ones who had been overlooked, talked over, and passed by. People who worked hard, thought fast, and deserved better. I gave them a place where their voices mattered. We weren't flashy, we just got things done. Then came the news. Tom's company had been bleeding for months. Clients gone, reputation ruined, investors nervous. Eventually, they accepted an acquisition offer from us. Technically, it was called a strategic merger, but we all knew what it really was. The day it went public, I was asked to visit the old office, now technically part of mine. I walked through the glass doors, everything familiar but colder, fewer smiles, more silence. Tom was waiting in the boardroom, seated at the end of the long table. No suit this time, no charm, just a man who looked older than he had months ago. He stood as I entered. "So," he said, his voice low, "you're the boss now." I nodded. "That's right." We stood there for a second. The air between us was thick with things neither of us needed to say. He finally spoke. "You were always good," he said quietly. I just didn't see it. I looked at him, steady. No anger, no gloating, just truth. "Better than pretty," I said. Then I turned, walked to the head of the table, and took his seat. And this time I smiled for real. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.